I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At a House Oversight Committee hearing on Wednesday, Congressman Jamie Raskin questioned NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Raskin's questioning centered around an investigation into the Washington Commanders. The Maryland Democrat asked the commissioner why there was an information sharing agreement with the Commanders. Raskin claimed that would allow Dan Snyder access to interviews from the investigation. Watch here for more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After the Washington Post expose of decades of sexual harassment at the team, Dan Snyder announced he'd be conducting an independent investigation into the toxic workplace culture. But then, when allegations surfaced implicating Mr. Snyder himself, the NFL said it was taking over the investigation. So far, so good. But then, in September of 2020, Mr. Goodell, you entered into a secret common interest agreement with Dan Snyder's team to share information about the investigation, which included an investigation into his own conduct. But you never told the women who were participating in interviews with Ms. Wilkinson that there was this secret agreement to share information. So now Mr. Snyder got access to these interviews. How is that protecting the privacy and confidentiality of the women, which you have asserted is your key value here?
Well, the common interest agreement, and I'm not an attorney, is a legal document that helped us transfer the commander's investigation to the league investigation. It is an agreement that did not prevent us from sharing information.
No, it guaranteed that you would share information, right?
No, it allowed us to make sure that we could continue the investigation with Beth Wilkinson so that she would not have to go back and have to meet with some of the people she had already met as witnesses and have to go through that entire process again.
Okay,
But let me nothing in that common interest agreement. And by the way, I'll just point out too that common interest agreement was entered into just a couple of weeks after we took over the investigation, when it was clear, before it was clear that this committee was even focused on this issue.
Well, right, this committee has nothing to do with it. The point is that Mr. Snyder had access to all of the interviews of the women whose confidentiality interests you're now purporting to assert. I'm puzzled by this, too. Why would you pay hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to investigate sexual harassment in a toxic workplace environment, but then publish no written report about it? You had a 243-page written report on Deflategate, as my colleague from Illinois pointed out, and you had another published report about sexual harassment with the Miami Dolphins where the names were redacted, where people felt there was a confidentiality problem. Why wasn't redaction sufficient to protect the anonymity of the women who were involved in the case of the Washington team?
Congressman, if I may, I just want to, I think, clarify something. To my knowledge and my understanding is Dan Snyder did not have access to those interviews that Beth Wilkinson had done, even while the team was overseeing that.
So you're saying he's never seen those interviews, you're saying?
Not to my knowledge, and I don't believe so.
Okay, why wasn't redaction sufficient to protect the anonymity of the women being interviewed in the case of the Washington team when it was sufficient in the case of the Dolphins?
In the case of the Dolphins, my recollection was no one had asked for any confidentiality. Not only did in the Washington
no, they did
matter,
because their names were redacted.
When I finish?
Please.
Not only in Washington, not only did they ask for confidentiality in many cases, we also promised them confidentiality.
Yes, that's what redaction is for. Okay, that's what redaction is for.
Redaction doesn't, Congressman, with all due respect, redaction doesn't always work in my world. I promise you.
Okay.
We need to take extra steps to make sure these people who did come through and courageously come forward.
All right. I got to reclaim my time here because I got another question for you. Between August of 2020 and April of 21, while the Wilkinson investigation was taking place, Dan Snyder conducted a parallel investigation of the women who spoke out, and he filed 10 lawsuits in 7 states around the country in an effort to expose and undermine those women who had allegedly participated in the Washington Post series. One federal judge described Snyder's legal actions as, quote, an effort to burden and harass individuals formerly associated with the team who may have acted as sources for the Washington Post, adding that the subpoenas that he issued were, quote, being done for what the court perceives is an improper purpose to discover the sources for the embarrassing and damning Washington Post story. So, did you do anything to try to stop Dan Snyder from harassing these women in court after they'd been sexually harassed? And do you condemn this action by Mr. Snyder?
I think any action that would discourage people from coming forward would be inappropriate and absolutely wrong. In fact, when we took over the investigation, we told the Washington commanders that they were not to do any investigations. By April 21, I think is the date you gave me, my recollection from your question, we were in the final stages, and Beth had probably met with most of the men and women that wanted to come forward. And we were getting close to concluding our investigation, our best investigation.
So you condemn that form of legal harassment against the women who came forward?
Madam Chair, time's
As I said, any kind of harassment against people who want to come forward and tell the truth, we would not permit and we would not find acceptable.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman, you are allowed to respond to his question. Okay, we have now recognized